Welcome to today's episode of the GROUPEX podcast. I'm your host, Tony Zanato. Today, I'll be talking to Ella Bryant, presenter for Les Mills Asia Pacific. Group exercise is not just for beginners. We know it's a great tool to help beginners form a habit, but it goes way deeper than that. Ella and I also discuss why I call the podcast GROUPEX and not GROUPFIT. So grab your favourite beverage, sit back and enjoy this episode. Ella, welcome to the GROUPEX podcast. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too, and thank you so much for having me.
No, look, and everybody says that to me, and I'm so honoured that all of you have said yes and want to be part of this. So from me to you, a massive thank you, and I'm sure that my listeners thank me as well for reaching out to you guys. So, yeah, all good.
Oh, thank you.
So let's kick it off. How did you get into the fitness industry? Where does your journey into fitness begin?
So I think I did my first group fitness class when I was at high school, and I sort of went along with some of my friends and absolutely loved it because I was a dancer at the time. And for the next couple of years, I sort of did it when I could afford it. So if I could get a free pass or a free week, I sort of made the most of that. And it wasn't really until my second year of university, when I was just started at law school, that I signed on the dotted line and I got a Les Mills membership. And because I was paying for it, I naturally went every day, and I just instantly fell in love with body step and body attack.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Love it. So what was the first class you ever did then?
So I've been thinking about this lately, and I actually can't remember exactly, but I do have some really strong early memories of going to body attack and body step at Les Mills Taranaki Street, which was then called Les Mills Extreme.
Yep.
As well as Les Mills on the terrace. And some of the instructors there, they were just like absolute rock stars to me. So Annika Ciolo, Lucy Pepworth, Richie Rapana, just seeing them, I was like, wow, I want to be like that.
I love that. What do you think it was that actually drew you into going to the gym?
I think having the background in dance, and I was a dance teacher at the time, seeing this really choreographed movement to music, it was just something magical. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that every single day of the week, twice a day. It's so fun.
So the addiction kicked in pretty early, you'd say?
Straight away, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So so that was it, that you said you were at uni, was that correct?
Yeah, so I was in my second year at law school, and I was teaching, first year at law school, second year at uni, and I was teaching dance at the time, and I sort of very quickly became hooked on the classes, and I was doing them every week.
Yep.
And probably about 8 or so months in, one of the step instructors, Chrissy, who went on to be my mentor, she sort of tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "Oh, have you thought about auditioning to be an instructor?" And I was like, yes, please.
I love that tap on the shoulder moment. There was someone I was chatting to recently about that, and it seems, I think there's a lot of us, a lot of instructors and a lot of people on the trainer presenter team, that's how we began. You know, someone from, you're in class, you're loving it, you're so enthusiastic that the instructor turns around and goes, "Oi, you, come and have a chat to me. I think you've got something here." And for me, it was Shannon Cleary here in Sydney. She was very played a big role in that for me, and was like, "Tone, you know how you're always underneath the fan in the second row on that bike there, and you're always singing and having fun. We've got a free spot. How about you come and do the module?" And for me, that was an eye opener, because I'd never thought about doing anything in the industry before at all. And when someone who I looked up to said that to me, I was like, okay, sure. What? Can you tell me a bit more about this? What does this actually entail? And yeah, before I knew it, there I was doing Cert 3, doing Cert 4, and that's where it all began, which was really interesting from the boy that was 150 kilos that sat under that fan and tried to keep cool, and yeah, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. Yeah, this is fun.
It's pretty special, right? When someone sort of looks at you and says, "I see something in you," and you're like, "Wow, me?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice feeling though, isn't it? It's when they say that to you, you have that moment of, I didn't realize. Okay, yep, you've seen something in me that I haven't seen in myself, but yeah, okay, let's give this a shot. So, how was module
And I
training
think,
for you?
well, I feel very, very blessed that the first module training I went on was actually most of the module trainings I went on were run by Mid Thomas, who is just
Legend.
absolutely an incredible lady. And I've
Yep.
listened to your episode where you've interviewed her, and yeah, I feel so lucky to have done several trainings with her. And I guess the first one just really, I felt like changed my life.
Yep. Tell us a little bit more about that, if you can.
So, um, it's almost like a classic group fitness story, but I often sort of joke around with some other instructors that people often, I think, fall in love with group fitness when they've fallen out of love with someone else, right?
Yep.
So maybe you have a bad breakup or a bad end to a relationship, and you start doing these classes, and next minute you're in love with the classes, and it's been a lifelong love.
Yep.
So I think at that particular point in my life, I just ended quite a messy relationship, and the weekend was module, so I was
Yep.
very emotional, as people are in their IMTs anyway.
Yep. Yep.
But it was just fantastic. It was a multi-module, so I think I was there for step, and there was a couple of attackers, a couple of pumpers, a couple of gritters,
Oh wow.
a couple of jammers. Yeah, it was full on. So I think probably had just under 20 people at Les Mills Hut City, and we all did all the various tracks. I think maybe twice on the first day and twice on the second day, and not having necessarily had exposure to all of those programs, it was a great crash course, and I just sort of
Definitely.
was like, oh, wait, what's the next one? They're all great.
Yeah. So that was back in New Zealand? Was that something that happened on a regular basis with the way they ran training modules there?
Yeah. So I think all, the only all my earlier modules were multi-modules. So when I
Wow.
did my IMT for attack, step, and even body jam, it was what was called a multi-module.
Yep.
And I don't want to speak out of turn because I can't remember the exact details, but I think it was sort of a demand thing where, they had a group of trainees in different programs, they'd get them all together and train them in one spot.
Yeah. I like that idea. It gives you that view, as you're saying, a view of all the multiple programs that are there during that time. But it must be really hard for the trainer presenter as well, because well, you know what you've got to deliver to hone in on each individual program and have the essence for each program, you as the trainer as well, to get that across to 15, 20 people that are in front of you. That'd be a challenge. But obviously,
when you describe it like that, it sounds like a job for Superwoman, and
yeah,
that
and
is
it was,
Thomas,
yes,
Superwoman.
yes.
And I think we sort of broke out and did different technique sessions. Like the step technique was separate to the body pump technique.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely loved the experience.
That's cool. So was it, and you've obviously done training modules here in Australia. Have you been part of the training module process here?
I've done all my modules in New Zealand with the exception of the trip, which I just dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And I did my module this year with Dallas, which was not only my first module in Australia, but also my first online module. And it was a really, really cool experience. And he's a very talented trainer.
Do you mind if I ask you some questions about the online module training? Because I haven't had that conversation with anyone as yet. And I think that some of the listeners would be interested to know a little bit more about that, because it's relatively new. I know they're still doing it as such. I know it was introduced, or my understanding is that it was introduced here during lockdown, during the craziness that was going on, so people could still be engaged and do stuff. But I know that it's still something that's happening now. So can you talk us through that process on what the online module entails and how it's different to a face-to-face module?
Certainly. So once again, I'm a little bit hazy on the details, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. But I think we got given some material prior to the module, and then it was all done sort of over Zoom. But a real credit to Dallas, because he was such a fantastic facilitator that, I don't know about you, but sometimes I lose my focus during Zoom meetings.
Yep.
I've got a relatively short attention span.
Yep.
But because he's such an engaging trainer, he had us all sort of like really strapped in. And in some ways, you still did the track presentations, and you kind of got to do little breakout groups where you'd teach part of the track and then someone else might pick it up. And it took a little bit of the pressure off, I think, because sometimes just physically standing up in front of someone can be really scary. So even though it was my probably fifth or sixth module, I was actually I was grateful to not be so nervous or scared.
Yep.
And then I think they still you still get together for day 3 in person. I think.
Yep.
Requirement.
Yep. This is the GROUPEX podcast. How was that experience online? I mean, I can only imagine. I know from the training modules that I did, and being there face to face with someone feels a little bit more connected with everything going on. You're saying that Dallas is really a real good connector in that regards. Did the module still flow? Did you get the content that you needed to get, or was it a challenge to grasp all of that kind of stuff throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I guess because I came in with those ideas of what a module is and what to expect, I found the content still flowed really easily.
Yeah.
But I imagine that might be different if you were coming in perhaps for your very first module, having never done one and never knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
But I still got all those great module feels, when you finish a module weekend and you're just totally exhausted and really hungry, and like I still felt all those feels, which was cool.
So did you have to have a bike at home in order to?
You did, and I don't have a bike at home, so I was actually, I think I was on the Wi-Fi at Fitness First Bondi Platinum, just with my laptop and bikes there.
But look, at least you were still able to do it in some fashion, which was
and I think a lot of the guys, because Trip's not a massive program in Sydney, I think some of the guys in Queensland, they'd got together in the Trip studio, I guess with that extra factor of the Trip. All your coaching, of course, is in time with the visuals, so in the road. So it's definitely a challenge trying to link up not only the Zoom, but then the visuals and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Technical challenge for sure. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because I suppose it gives us a bit of an understanding on how different it is compared to the face-to-face when you're learning, you're in there. So you still would have had to, everyone takes a turn, of presenting and doing everything in that way. Wow. That's cool. That's really cool. I think that's a step in the I suppose the right direction. This day and age, especially with Australia being so big, and the biggest challenge that I remember Les Mills facing back when I was working there at head office was that clubs in regional areas, for a regional instructor to come to training that was on the coast somewhere, could cost them $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 just in order for flights, accommodation, everything from the time they left on the Friday morning to the time they got back on the Monday or whatever, because you're not going to get a flight out late on a Sunday night. You're not going to get a flight in early on a Saturday morning. If you're out in Dubbo or Broken Hill or regional, wherever you may be, some of those areas are a real challenge to get to. So I think it's hats off to Les Mills for designing something that they can actually do online as well, and still make sure that it's engaging and you guys are able to do it. But I do think, as you said, that day 3, getting people in face-to-face on day 3, that's when the what's the word I'll use? Family. That's when you become part of it, and it all ties it in together, and then that, that's right, I remember seeing your face online. Yeah, cool. Yes, I feel I know you, even though I don't know you. Yeah, they're in the same room with you and running through that. That's cool.
And look, if I had a trainee come up to me and say, I'm doing my body attack training, should I do the online or the in-person? Unquestionably, I'd tell them to do the in-person. I think, as you said, the online's a great offering and for particular circumstances, but in general, I think nothing quite beats that live experience, right?
Yeah. No, that's cool. Awesome. Right, let's head back to if we can, let's go back to New Zealand. Rewind your mind back into to New Zealand days and when you actually did your module training. Can you remember the first class you taught?
Yeah, so I guess as a very baby body step instructor, I was very fortunate to be in a really strong team of step instructors in Les Mills, Taranaki Street. So I did a lot of shadowing, and I did a lot of shadowing with a lot of people, and they was sort of quite diverse instructors. I think there was 3 or 4 females and 3 or 4 males. So I got exposure to a lot of different teaching styles, a lot of really, really helpful feedback, and also the mentorship I got from my original mentor, Chrissy, was just fantastic. You know, we'd meet every Sunday and go into the mirrors and just go through arm lines and everything like that. And also a really inclusive culture that we were always organising, you know, the annual Christmas body step class or lots of fun events for the members. I do have a really strong memory of one of my first classes. I didn't teach it solo, but I team taught with my friend Lucy, and she sort of just casually off the cuff said, "Oh, Annika's coming to join us today," and I was like, "Wait, do you mean Annika off Body Step 93, the one on the DVD?" And she was like, "Yeah, she's my friend. She's coming." And Annika used to live in Wellington, so I'd done her classes in the past. But I was like, jaw on the floor, and I think I was teaching like one track or half a track, and I was like, I'm so nervous. Like, this is a dream come true.
Oh, that's brilliant. I like that. I think having those nerves shows that you really love doing what you do. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are, oh, I was just nervous and I lost it all. It's like, yeah, but let's have a look at the reason why we're feeling what we're feeling. You're feeling it because you love so much what you do. Yeah, you've looked up to that person, but you also, I've got to make sure I don't screw this up. I've got to do this right. And it's I think if you ever get to that place where you don't have those feelings, that's when I think you need to stop. Because I think it's right. You don't know it all. You're always going to learn, and if you lose the butterflies or you lose that nervous feeling, then I think that's when you have the realization of going, okay, maybe I'll stop now. Go do something else.
Yeah, I think that's such a good way to think about it.
Yeah. So STEP was your first module training. What came next?
So STEP was my first module training, and because I was just Les Mills obsessed, I was like, oh, what can I do next? I love all these classes, and I was begging the GFM at the time, who later went on to become a really good friend of mine. I said, please let me do a TAC, and he sort of very kindly said, oh, let's get you settled into STEP first, and maybe let's get you a little bit stronger, because you know strength is a really important part of body attack. And naturally I sat in the sort of aerobic aspect of the essence, but I was still coming into myself with, you know, strength training. And at the time I was like, oh, I want to do it now. And actually waiting a year or a couple of years was probably the very best thing and the very best advice. So it was probably another 2 or so years later that I did a module for body attack.
Okay.
Again with mid.
I love it. Mate, you were so lucky. So lucky. I'm nothing against the trainer and presenter team here in Australia, but I think if I'd say there'd be a lot of instructors here that if they ever had the opportunity to attend module training with Mid or with Susan or Emma Barry or any of those guys that ever did it for a few guys over in NZ, they'd be beside themselves. It's yeah.
And I think listening to a couple of the other guests on your show, I did really appreciate just how spoiled we are in New Zealand. Like, I think my jam module was Sarah Robinson, and you know, even just the mentors I've had when I did my body balance training, got to teach with Sue Ashton and Steve Yee, and just real legends. And you don't necessarily realize it until you leave New Zealand that the people who you've been around and you've looked up to and have mentored and helped you are really rock stars.
Yes. So nice. Hey, I've just realised I completely jumped ahead of what I asked you with Body Step and your first class. Your first class that you taught and how it was. You said you're nervous because Annika was coming along. Can you remember much about that class at all? Did you nail it? Did you screw it up? Did you there was obviously nerves going on, but how was it? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think I mean every instructor has that moment where they absolutely muck up, right? Fortunately, because I got such great mentorship and development, there wasn't really too many of those moments. So I sort of got, started taking half a track or then one track or then 3 tracks. And I didn't take my whole class on my own until I was really, really ready. And I feel very fortunate for that. I think also, I guess being a dancer and having a dance background, I sort of expected to be quite good at instructing, and I probably wasn't. I think there's some things about dance that don't automatically translate to group fitness. Obviously phrasing in counts of 8. Even just starting on the 1, whereas the whole concept of pre-cueing, that took me quite a long time to get. And I guess one of the things about body step is you have to be you have to be very precise about where you're pre-cueing and your exact word choice, because if you say single knee lift rather than knee, you know, you've already missed the boat and they're already doing something different. So I think that was a good learning curve selling as a first program.
Yeah. No, brilliant. The look, my first program was RPM. You can't really screw things up on a bike, can you? Yeah, you just sit there and pedal, and your legs go round and round and round. And oh, damn, we should have been standing up. Okay, stand up, let's go. You know, you can't really screw it up, even though I've seen some. Oh, I've seen some.
Well, look, I was very judgmental about cycle choreography. You know, that in my head I thought, oh well, you're just pedaling. Yeah. Then I picked up the trip, and I was so wrong. There is a lot more to cycle choreography.
Yeah, look, there is. I dumb it down a fair bit when I say it in the way they say it, but it there is a lot in it. Yes, you are correct. I think the basics of it though, when you think about it and you break it down, you've got resistance on and you're standing, you got resistance on and you're sitting. Well, there's not much resistance on and you're still pedaling, you know, when you break it down to the simplicity. But yes, especially when you're riding along to a visualization in front of you and you need to keep in time with that, there's a lot more cueing going on than just a normal RPM or a sprint class. Completely, especially with trip, I will say that for sure. Yeah.
But it's kind of what makes it just absolutely out of this world magic, you know?
Yeah.
The combination of the visuals, landing with the beat, landing with, you know, whatever resistance you've chosen. I'm obsessed. Yeah. I can't rave about the trip enough. It's so great.
I think it's great. The people that I've spoken to that teach it through a couple of clubs that I know from Sydney have said, Tony, that it's so different to anything else they've ever done. The fact that they're not looking at participants. They're in front of participants. They're leading participants in that way, or the bike is in line with the participants and they're all there doing it together. It means your cueing needs to be spot on, because while they can still see what's coming and know sort of in their mind what's going to happen, if you don't cue it right, all of a sudden, oh, hang on a second, I'm still sprinting and we're climbing a hill. That doesn't quite fit. It's not working with what we're trying to do here. So, yeah. Look, hats off to anyone that's teaching the trip, and hopefully we start seeing more and more clubs across New South Wales and across Sydney especially start jumping on and taking on trip.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
Can you remember your first class you taught by yourself from beginning to end?
That's a shocking, but I actually can't.
No, look, I asked that question to a couple of people, and a lot of people said to me, Tony, you know what, I've been teaching for that long. No, I don't. I did, because I'd never come from a teaching background or anything like that before. The only time I'd ever been in front of other people was in a boardroom, in a meeting, you know, for a business meeting or whatever it may be. And that's maybe 5 or 6 people. When I taught my first class, I covered on a Thursday night. I'll never forget walking in there, and there was a girl in the front row that turned around that I knew was a regular, because I was a regular participant of that class. She turned around and she said, oh, were you teaching? And I said, yeah. And so she got up and walked out. And so before the class had even started, I was like, oh, there goes a bit of confidence that I had. But you know what? Yeah, whatever. She was there. She didn't like me. Cool. Ta-da. Next.
Oh, we've all had that though.
Yeah.
And it still happens.
Yeah. Oh,
look, I was finishing teaching last week. I was packing up my things, and a lady comes up to me and she said, it's still Marlon teaching pump, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, don't worry. I'm just leaving. She's like, okay, good.
They don't mean anything by it, and I know that, but it's that whole, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
that
it's all good.
Yeah, good.
I'll just show myself out.
Probably worse if they hold the door open for you.
Yeah.
But no, I just remember, you know, walking in and doing it, and yeah, the people that stayed were fantastic, but I'm sure that I screwed up track 3 and I finished like 45 seconds before we're meant to. You know, just that type of stuff, as we were saying before, you know, we've all had those train wreck moments, and the class was cool. They were just like, sweet, you know, Tone, we get it. You know, you're usually here with us, and to be up there is when there's 30 people staring back at you, the nerves and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I do remember my first class on the timetable, which it would have been where I taught my first class, and it was Friday night, 5:30, Studio 2
Tough
at
time
Lismore
slot.
Taranaki Street. Yeah, but it ended up being just the most magical class. I took it over from an instructor who I just worshipped, a lady named Miriana, and we just had so many good times in that class because everyone was so raucous on a Friday evening, and
Yep.
actually met a lot of long-term friends just from coming to that class. So
Yep.
yeah, it holds a very special place in my heart.
Nice. I like hearing that. A lot. So, okay, we jumped ahead and now I jump back and I'm going to jump ahead again. Body attack. Your body attack training module. Can you give us a little bit about that and how different it would have been from, or was it, you said it was a multi as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yep. So, can you talk us through that multi, how they actually ran those modules back in New Zealand?
Yeah, so I believe that one was out at Les Mills Hut City as well. And I did that one with a close friend of mine who was also training in body attack, Jeremy, and he actually teaches over here now too. He's based in Victoria, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
And as I've been listening to some of your episodes, I've heard some of the experiences of the Australian initial modules, and they do actually sound in some ways quite different to what I experienced in New Zealand. In that, I guess when I did my first module, it would have been about, I want to say 2012-ish, but we did get the material beforehand. So you got allocated a track, I'd say maybe 5 days before, and I think given or loaned a DVD,
Yep.
I guess, because it was still DVDs at the time in the choreography notes. And you were expected to learn the track and obviously then present it a couple of times on day one and a couple of times on day two. And I've heard anecdotes about cleared to shadow and pass to shadow, and I don't think we had that in New Zealand. I'm pretty sure it's just pass or fail.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to pass.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think so. When you do the presentations, you might do a track 3 from body attack, and then you might do a track 6 from body attack, and then you might do the pumpers. So you might do a chest track, or you might do whatever.
Yep. Oh, okay.
And if you're really lucky, you got a dance program on there, and then you saw the pump boys trying to do it.
Yep, that'd be for those listeners. I'll just remind you on my story for Zumba. Go back and have a listen to one of those episodes, guys. You'll know that Tony has 2 left feet, and apparently my hips don't sway; they just move side to side in a horizontal motion. Brilliant. Cool. So the module training, I think, from what the guys have told me and what I'm understanding recently here in Australia, we were back in those early days. It was pass to shadow or fail. Sorry, pass to shadow or fail. There was the 3 different outcomes that they had. Do you know if that's still the same here now, or has it just changed to pass and fail here?
I'm not sure. I'm really excited to be starting my journey as a trainer next year in 2023. So
Excellent.
At this stage, I'm very much a baby body attack trainer, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
Cool. Well, we'll stay tuned. We may get you on again next year and have a chat to you and find out how that journey has gone into becoming a trainer and what you've had to go through for that as well. So I look forward to, if you're interested, we may get you on again and do another revisit on that one. So cool. So what brought you out here to Australia? Now, I know you come out on a plane. Don't get me wrong. I understand that business. But what brought you over to Aussie?
Well, to be totally honest, it was mostly to move with my partner.
Sweet.
So he sort of moved over here for his business, and I guess that came off the back of the 2020 lockdowns.
Yes.
So 2020 was quite a challenging year in terms of shifting my mindset. 2020 was the year that I first made it onto the New Zealand trainer and presenter team, which was a goal I'd worked towards for a long time.
Awesome.
And I was just absolutely thrilled and rapt. And at the start of 2020, we had our trainer team summit up in Auckland. So I got to meet the other members of the team who weren't based locally, and we did some really cool events up there. And I think I got to the first quarter, and I travelled up to Auckland and I presented attack and step up in Auckland. And then shortly after that, came back to Wellington, and here comes COVID, and I think it actually meant for our tap team contracts that we sort of, I mean, I can't remember exactly, but more or less got made redundant. So
Yes. Yep.
I was pretty gutted because that was a goal I'd worked towards for a long time. But it was also a really good reminder that actually the only important thing is being able to teach to the group of people in front of you, team or no team, workshops or no workshops, just being there with your participants. It's always the most important thing. So once we finally got back into the gyms and we were teaching, I then went and injured myself quite colossally.
What did you do?
So I was actually in a open dance class, and I went to do a fan kick on a forced arch, and my ankle stayed where it was, and my knee did a full 180. So I managed to dislocate all of the ligaments. Dislocate my kneecap and then tear the ligaments between my two shin bones. So I was, I thought it was ACL. Fortunately, I gave the ACL a big tug, but didn't tear it. But I was in a moon boot for about 3 or 4 months, and they actually told me that I would never dance and I'd never do group fitness again. And so there was many tears on the phone to my GFM and my very good friend Mandy Jones. She put up with a lot of tantrums. And then, you know, fortunately I got into the trip. I did my rehab. I was a good girl, and by sort of February or March, I was back jumping. Yep.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm so grateful to hear that for you, but at the same time, I could only imagine getting a notification or call or whatever it was to say, oh, by the way, yeah, you're not going to be able to dance again. You know how you've done that all your life? Yeah, no. And you know how much you really love group exercise? Yeah, no. No, we're just telling you no, you're never going to be are you... What?
Yeah, I was heartbroken, and I literally remember ringing Mandy in tears, and, you know, she's been the biggest mentor to me, just, and my ultimate inspiration. And it was really, really hard to take.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I can only imagine what you went through with that. But hey, let's celebrate the good. You're back into it, and you're actually you're smashing it. And not only that, I'm doing the trip. So, you know, tell me that I can't use my knee. Watch me.
Well, yeah, I was taking that moon boot. I was putting one foot in the straddle and then the moon boot on top of the other pedal. And I wasn't doing sit stand, but I was just pepping my little heart out because can't stop me doing group fit.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Hey, you did mention that you got onto the trainer presenter team in NZ. Tell us, is there a difference between the trainer and presenter team in New Zealand and the experience you had there compared to the trainer and presenter team here in Aussie?
Yeah, there does seem to be a few differences. And again, I'm not an expert, so I hope everyone's fact checking anything I say, because I can't speak with any certainty.
We'll put a reference at the end of this podcast, or the appendices. Yeah, is that what I'm trying to say? The appendix at the end. Yeah, so that people can actually fact check and
But I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are probably quite similar between the two, in that, you know, you in New Zealand, I think certainly when I auditioned, you needed to have at least 2 programs at a high level, and probably with the requisite advanced or AIM training, whatever it was at the time. And yeah, when I was successful, we did, I think, a video submission and then some live auditions. Whereas I've spoken to some people who got on the team here in that process, and I think it could be different.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
Before I was successful, I'd applied the previous year, and maybe the previous year before that, and been unsuccessful, which at the time I was disappointed. But in hindsight, I actually think it was a really good learning experience. And I remember when I wasn't successful, some of the feedback I got from the National Group Fitness Manager at the time, who I think is still the National Group Fitness Manager, Benjamin Ciolo.
Yes.
He said to me, Ella, if you want to get better at body attack, you're going to have to do less body attack. And I think that's just some feedback that's really stayed with me, and it's really important, because body tech is such a fantastic workout, and I could sing about it till the cows come home. But you do notice a lot of instructors and participants who fall similarly in love and think that they should do it or could do it 5 or 6 times a week.
Yep.
And because it is a high energy and what I think is to be quite a high intensity program, I think it's actually best done once, twice, max 3 times a week.
Yeah. Yep.
And I found that when I did less of that and more of my own training, my performance got better. And
Yep.
Ben was just completely right.
Yeah. I like hearing that. That's good advice. Yeah. So anyone listening, if you're doing it 7 times a week, slow down. Hey, why did you want to become a trainer and presenter? What was it that gelled with you that just went, hey, I want to do that?
Yeah, and I guess this actually probably highlights one of the differences I've noticed between Australia and New Zealand is in New Zealand, I was a regional workshop presenter for quite a few years before I made it onto the team. So I think that's different, that you have the ability to present at a workshop without necessarily being on the national team in New Zealand. And because I've been doing that for a few years, I had some really great opportunities. And the way they did it at the time was when you were doing a workshop, you'd have a workshop coach. And so I was really lucky to work with some really fantastic world-class coaches, often Giles, Bryant, or Charlotte Fleetwood for step, or Giles for attack. And just doing that process of, you'd have your workshop track, you'd send it to the coach for review, you'd get feedback, and then you were able to apply the feedback before teaching the quarterly workshop.
Yep.
I just noticed how much better I got and how good that feedback process was. And sort of once you get hooked on that idea of feedback and getting better, it's really addictive. And I think lots of instructors who might just sort of be teaching for a number of years and they get to a ceiling where they're great, but they're not looking at ways to keep getting better, you can get a bit stale.
Yes.
So I think it was probably my experience teaching those workshops that made me really want to be a part of the team. And of course, naturally, I looked up to everyone who was on the team, and pivotally for me, it would be Mandy, who is, and she was probably the first person that said to me, "Oh, Ella, have you ever thought about, trying out for the team? Have you ever thought about auditioning?" And it is that really powerful moment again of if someone just believes in you, it says, "Oh, I think you could do it." And I was like, "Oh, wow, really?" And it sort of just set the seed in my head.
What did you learn about yourself through the process of applying for the trainer and presenter team? Was there something that you were confronted by in yourself? And you said that Ben gave you the feedback to not do as many. Is there anything that you were aware of, or you became self-aware of yourself during that process?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One thing which I'm still quite aware of, and I think lots of people are, but I definitely subscribe to the school of thought that it's better to be great at one or two things than to be good or okay at many. And I think there's definitely been times in group fitness, and I think a lot of instructors fall into this trap where they're like, "Oh, I want to teach this, and I want to teach this, and I want to teach this." And there's definitely a point where you can only give your love and passion and dedication to a certain number of programs. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be a great instructor in another program, but you just have to decide where you want to focus your energy.
Sometimes you end up being what do they say, a jack of all, a master of none.
Yeah, or a Jill of all.
Yeah. So okay. Yes. Maybe is there a I was going to say unisex. That's the word I'm looking for. Is there a non-binary term that we could probably use? Yeah. Are they of all and are they of none? No, that's nothing. Anyway.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, we know what we're trying to say. Yeah. That's cool though. I appreciate that, and I think that's a good awareness to have, and especially if you're teaching so many programs, well, that's great. If you really want to take it to the next step and hone in on your skills and do something, choose one, choose two maybe, and then really hone in and focus on what you need to do to get better. I think there's a big theme of a lot of the guests that I've had on recently about feedback, taking on feedback, getting the feedback and listening to the feedback and implementing that feedback as well. I think it was Inga's one of the chat I had with Inga around feedback is like Christmas presents. You get to choose, which ones you want to take on board and which ones you go, oh, thanks. Yeah, cool. Just leave that one over there and, whatever. I think that's
re-gift that one.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's good though to actually have all this self-awareness as we are instructors and learning more about ourselves to further our own education and become better at our trade, what we're doing. A lot of us these days, I don't believe, are doing it full time anymore. I think we've all got proper jobs. As I remember someone saying to me one day, "Oh, you got a proper job?" I'm like, "No, I'm a group fitness instructor and a personal trainer. That is my proper job." Oh. Like, what do you mean? Oh, that was fantastic at the time. And I think now, though, especially since that wretched virus come around and said hello to us all, I think there's a lot of people that were full-time trainers that are no longer full-time trainers that are now doing it as a second gig. And so we have more time, I think, as well. What I'm trying to get at is we have more time to focus on the things that we want to do and we can actually try and master them a little bit better.
I think that's such an interesting dichotomy though, because I think there's two sides to it. On the one side, all those people that said to you, have you got a proper job? Being a fitness professional certainly is a proper job. And I remember after I finished law school, I worked briefly as we used to call them Jimmy, and I heard Inga talk about them on her episode, or Jimmy or Red Shirt. And basically you show people around the gym and you do a bit of cleaning and you're like a baby PT. And I was doing my PT apprenticeship at the time, and I thought that I was going to be a PT. And I remember I took this lady for a tour around the gym, and I made a joke with her about the hair straighteners, because someone had done, she worked for a government department, and someone had done an official information request for the cost of the hair straighteners at the ministry for primary industries or whatever it was. And I made a joke, and she sort of said something quite rude to me. She was like, "Oh, how do you know what an official information act request is?" And I just felt like she was belittling sort of my job as a fitness professional, and that I was only limited to the gym. And I just, anyone who thinks that it's not a proper job is wrong. Because
look, I was in there full time from 2003 to 2012 before I left, and then went to work for Les Mills, which in the industry still is a full time job, even though I wasn't teaching full time and I wasn't in the job full time. But it's there was a lot of people back then that were very much, oh, you're going to get a real job one day. It's like, hang on a second. It's not for me and not for us and not for what we're doing.
Yeah. And a lot of my close friends are personal trainers, and hats off to them, because those hours are hard. The amount of emotional energy you've got to invest in people is huge. The amount of ongoing sort of CPD or upskilling in terms of the relevant knowledge, it's monumental. So when I was tossing up between PT and law school, one of them you get to go home at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. So. Yes. No, I used to laugh at that because my hours were 5 to 9, not 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It was the 5 a.m. starts because you're up, because you had clients at 6 and you were getting there and doing what you had to do. And then I remember getting home at 9 o'clock because my last session would finish at about 8:30. And it was like you were there all day long. There were long ones. Admittedly, though, there was an hour or two where I could go down to Bondi Beach or to Mosman and lie on the beach for an hour or so in the middle of the day, but that didn't happen all that often.
It's good and bad,
yes,
right?
Yeah, depending on what sort of clients you had.
I always do feel, certainly teaching classes full time, I certainly feel pleased that there's a reduction in that, because I think certainly a lot of, for example, body attack, I personally wouldn't recommend that anyone teaches more than 4 or 5 a week, because it's a high intensity program, and we know we've got enough knowledge now that high intensity shouldn't be done repeatedly day after day. And if you really want to be giving your all to your classes, the less you can do and still make it affordable, the better, I think.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
Have you had an opportunity to do filming, a masterclass filming?
I had an absolutely amazing opportunity this year where I went to be a part of Les Mills Live in London, and I have no words to describe how amazing it was. I was part of Body Step 130, and was part of an amazing team of instructors from all around the world.
Tell me more, because I can see the smile on your face. Or I was going to say, actually, no, don't tell us anything. We'll just keep it at that. No, I want to know more.
That's all right, Tony. I've only been telling anyone who'll listen for the past 3 months.
Well, I want you to tell me all about it. Tell me about when you got the call up to say, hey, do you want to come over and do this? Right from the beginning. Tell us the whole story if you can.
So I think about maybe halfway through the year, we got an email from one of the TAP team, Les Mills Asia Pacific TAP team sort of coordinators, and they said, anyone who could get themselves to London, we'd sort of look at putting you forward to be in one of these filming opportunities.
So, and you said no straight away. I can't get there.
I said I'd sell my firstborn child to get there. But I just said yes, of course, because my partner and I were sort of thinking we'd go to that side of the world anyway. And I didn't really think too much of it. And then when I got the email, I was in New York at the time, and I was just so wrapped. I was practically screaming the hotel room down. Yeah, and just I guess from then on, the process of being involved was just an amazing experience. We were basically required to send in some videos of us teaching the track we were going to be teaching, and then we got a couple of rounds of feedback, which was
cool.
I mean, to get feedback from the program director, from Mark himself, is obviously something that, lots of people would just be wrapped at that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it also gave me a really interesting insight into the filming process and things that you might say in a workshop and it might be okay.
Yep.
When it's going on the masterclass, it has to change.
Yes, you've got to teach to a different audience as such, or the message you're getting across, even though it is for instructors, is also for someone that may be watching it at home, and that one person that is tuning in on the other end. Which, from
totally.
what I've chatted to a couple of the others, and that's one thing that a lot of them have said is the filming process obviously has changed a lot over the years. It's evolved as it needed to, but the way that you end up teaching your track is almost like you're teaching to one individual person, not a room full of people, because you need to make sure it lands with that one person that is tuning in. That one person that's on the other end of that experience. It's cool. So how many instructors were how many trainers were on presenters were on stage
for Body Step?
Yeah.
So I think it was meant to be about 30 of us, but unfortunately 3 of the presenters from Les Mills Africa, they got COVID just before the filming, so they couldn't make it.
Yep.
Yeah, which is a real bummer. But I think there ended up being maybe about 25 of us, and the tracks were generally split into 3.
Yep.
So my track, I was with 2 fantastic instructors, one from Les Mills Spain and one from Les Mills Germany.
Awesome. And when's that release come out? Is it out now?
So that's,
or is it's
quarter 1 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we just workshopped Body Step 129, and this will be
And I hear that at Les Mills Live in London, there was only like 3 or 4 people that rocked up. Is that true?
Well, look, because I was lucky enough to be involved with Les Mills Live in Melbourne.
Yep.
And I was shadowing for Body Attack and Body Balance there. And when I got out on that stage, and I was just shadowing, so no pressure about saying something goofy. I was just there to do my thing.
Yeah.
But I remember getting on that stage and looking out, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people here. And I wasn't expecting it, because I taught a lot of workshops before, and through dance, I'd performed at the Rugby Sevens, and I'd performed to some big crowds. And when I got on that stage, I was like, oh my gosh, the jaw drop. There's a lot of people here.
Yep.
And then in London, it was that like times a million.
Yeah.
I think there was nearly 2,000 steppers in the room when we taught.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. That yep. to see that many
It
people
was
doing step at once. I mean, I've seen, I think it's 1,000 I've seen for Pump or something like that. There was a one in Sydney, or even the filming they did here at Fox Studios in Sydney. I think that was in 2018 or 2019. That was just massive to see so many people moving in that way. But when you think step, when you think there's, wow, that's coordinated.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
I have a bit of a funny story about the filming. Because I was a bit nervous because I had to actually teach and I had to actually say the right things, and all of a sudden there was 2,000 people in front of me. And from what I'd heard anecdotally from friends who'd done filming, especially in that sort of live context, if possible, they don't want to stop, right? So they just want to go start to finish.
Yep.
And I was one of the final tracks, so I was peak number 3. And we'd made it right the way through the class, and all my co-presenters had done a stellar job. There was no mistakes. It was all going hunky-dory, smooth as a whistle. And I got on to teach my track, and I was teaching the tail end of the track. So the bring it home, the woohoo.
Yep.
And I got to my part, and I literally said one cue. I literally said, okay, single down tap. And then it cut out. Music stopped, mic stopped. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? Have I touched my microphone? Because you're not allowed to touch my microphone. Or have I said something wrong? And actually, I turned around and poor Caleb Lee, she'd got a really bad cramp. So they'd stopped the filming for her because I think she had a bad day and she was maybe dehydrated or something.
Wow.
She'd got a bad calf cramp. But funnily enough, I think maybe that got rid of the nerds because that was like a test go. And then when we started the track again,
you were sweet.
Yeah, it's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah. And she battled through like absolute trooper. You know, that lady's just incredible.
Oh wow! I remember the filming in Sydney, and I think it was Attack. Could have been Attack. They stopped a couple of times throughout just to try and get things right with it all. Then obviously when they were on the floor, they needed to make sure that there was people out of the way in order to get the filming correct, so you could see the trainers on the floor as well. Mm-hmm. I think most of them went through, but I remember because I was there for Attack because Rach was there, and I think I remember that happening, but I don't remember it from many of the others or hearing about the others in that way. Most of it is done, as you said, the one take, let's go. Not like this podcast.
Thank goodness for that.
Sorry, I forgot to do my hair. But no, I think that's cool though. That's a really nice experience for you to be, in front of 2,000 people, not in front of your own home crowd either. People that you do not know or that they don't know you all that well, if at all, can be really daunting. Can be, I think a couple of them have sort of said, we got up on stage, and I think it was actually, the chat that I've had with Susan, where she actually said to me, she said, Tony, I got up and I just couldn't remember what I had to say. There's that moment of everything just left me, and it was, the music sort of started and it was like, oh, right, there it is. Yeah, okay, let's go. I think that moment is real for people as well.
Totally. Yeah. But I think my personal experience was just so positive because not only did I get to see some familiar, friendly faces from home, I got to see Minnow and KB, and they were so welcoming, like, oh, Ella, so great to see you again. Yep. But then very quickly, because we had rehearsals for the 4 days leading up to it, I got to know the other step presenters really well. And group fitness is like a language, right? Like everyone who teaches it speaks it. So very quickly, we just had so much in common. We were chatting away like old friends, and I'm sure by now we're just friends for life. So it was a really special and welcoming experience.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
Hey, out of all the programs you've got under your belt, is there a favourite release that you've got or that you have that you, I suppose, if not a favourite release, a safety blanket?
I could probably literally, I could tell you my safety playlist for every program I teach, and everyone has it, right? You have that really busy week where you're prepping for workshops, you've got something happening at work, you've got someone's birthday, your in-laws are staying, and you're like, I just don't have time to prep my class. So you've got your go-tos, and I literally have that playlist for every program.
Excellent. No, I think that's wonderful because you nailed it. You've got to have that. You don't know what life's going to throw at you, and having that oh damn it, I haven't. It's all right. Got the best of. I got the best of Ella here, and I can do this one.
It's a banger, by the way.
Yeah.
But to be honest, if I'm teaching new tracks, like I say, I'm preparing for a workshop, and I've got 3 or 4 new tracks in there that I'm not confident with. Sometimes I'll put those safety tracks. I'll just cushion them in there because then you know that if something goes not quite right, you know that the next track is going to be definitely right, and it's going to be a winner.
Yeah. The chat that I had recently with Nathan White, we spoke about doing the...
I listened to it, yeah.
The worst of, and I still strongly believe that every instructor
listening
needs
to it
to...
in Starbucks.
Yeah, needs to get
you
out of that.
You got to put some shit tracks in there.
Yes, you've got to throw some garbage in there where you go, nah, I don't normally do that. And it mixes it up for you, but also if you're doing the same style or same releases over and over and over and over again, your members are going to get bored. So mix it up. Do some of the crap, I say. I think it's I'm still waiting for him to get in touch with me and say, Tone, I did the worst of Nathan, and let me tell you, I nailed it. Anyone that's listening,
to that part of your podcast, and I was just laughing my head off in Starbucks on my own. I just thought that was hilarious. I also really resonated with what he said about I definitely rode that very steep learning curve that when I first started teaching steps, certainly, I thought, or I put some sort of unjustified expectation on myself, that I needed to teach an entirely new release every single week.
Yep.
And I probably fell into that trap for a good couple of years. And it's probably actually only this year that I realized that I don't need to do an entirely different playlist for every program every week.
Yeah.
I'd say even before this year, I was putting pressure on myself, certainly for things like Jam or even Attack, to do an entirely new playlist every single week. And just because you can, or just because you've finally got the skills where you can competently do that, doesn't necessarily mean that you should, because it puts a lot of additional pressure on you.
Yeah.
And I'd rather teach a really good class than a class that was fresh, but sort of 75% good.
Yeah. Yeah. I found towards the end of my teaching in Canberra before we moved up to the Gong that I was doing that. I had to mix it up every single time I taught, and I was teaching 3 times a week. So there was a different playlist 3 times a week. Yeah, there might have been one track that was the same, but most of the rest of it was different because I needed to change. I needed to freshen things up. The class that the people that were there, it was just 6:05 a.m. in Canberra on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. Now in Canberra, 7 months of the year, it's freezing cold. So I understand why they were coming in order to get warm and, exercise and do stuff. But the same people were there time in, time out. So that was why in my head I was like, I've got to do something different, because if I do the same release we did on Monday, they're going to go, dude. Or come in on Friday and do the same again and be like, come on, what's going on here? So I try and make sure that it was something different every single time. But you're right, it does put a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah. It's funny though, because the reciprocal is totally true. When you've taught, like, probably even the workshops that have just been, when you've taught a track 3 or 4 times in a row, and the 5th time you go to teach it, you're like, I'm completely sick of this track.
Yeah.
I need a break from it. I need to put it away.
I've put autopilot on, and I know what I'm going to say when I'm going to say it. And I don't want to say that anymore, which is why I referred to Nathan, do the crap releases, because it puts you thinking differently. So all of a sudden you're saying different stuff to motivate you and try and get that out, where you can then use in your normal tracks or your best of release that you're doing. It just allows your brain to switch in that way and yeah.
And as you guys mused, that track that you hate, maybe it's the Adele squat track or something.
Yep.
There'll be someone in your class
that'll love it.
That's their favourite track.
Yes.
And they're so rapt that you've taught it.
There could be a Taylor Swift song somewhere.
Oh.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
How did the opportunity come up for you to be on the trainer and presenter team here in Australia?
Yeah, so I guess after I relocated from New Zealand to Sydney at the start of 2021, I was finally just getting back to teaching after my injury. And so being a huge part of my life, I was very focused on getting back into my teaching in Sydney. And I was really fortunate to have some really kind help from Inga.
Yep.
So because during the New Zealand lockdown, Inga had actually got stuck in New Zealand. So she walked into one of my classes and I knew straight away who she was because we had a lot of mutual friends. And of course, she's beautiful, Inga, from the Body Balance DVDs. So I was, starstruck, and I said, "Oh gosh, what are you doing here? It's so great to see you." And she sort of commented that she was more or less stuck because of the borders being closed.
Yeah.
And she was, of course, working on her PhD because she's incredibly intelligent and a superwoman.
Crazy superwoman, lady, crazy.
But the silver lining of that was that we actually ended up team teaching together. She'd come and teach my Friday lunchtime balance class with me for about probably a good 3 or 4 months.
Awesome.
And she also gave me a lot of really good feedback, which was really helpful, and I felt really lucky. And so when I reached out to her to say that I was moving over here, she was just really fantastic about reaching out to certain people. And she actually introduced me to Amanda Breen virtually. And then same with Amanda, she was just very, very welcoming. I was able to do some team teaching of Body Jam with her in her Wednesday night Park Street class, which is an amazing Body Jam class.
Nice.
But I was sort of pretty mindful of the fact that while I was very passionate about group fitness and committed, that coming here, I was a very, very small fish in a very big pond. And there was a lot of really, really good instructors here. I remember the first workshop I went to in 2021 was Steve and Jackie teaching Body Attack. And I was just absolutely blown away. Like, I'd been to a lot of Body Attack workshops in New Zealand, but seeing those two in action, they are just incredible. And again, people I'd looked up to for a long time. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, these Aussies are really, really good. So I was obviously keen to join the team if the opportunity ever came up, but I was also keen to sort of just establish myself and learn from the high quality instructors over here.
Yep.
And I guess that opportunity actually came up towards the end of 2021. So my partner and I actually spent 3 months back in New Zealand. My best friend was getting married and his best friends were getting married. So we had to do the hotel MIQ, and the timing went that we got the MIQ spot in December and we stayed December, January, February. And so I got the email saying that auditions were coming up and would I like to apply. And so I sent in some video submissions while I was in New Zealand.
Cool. And a big tick to say, yeah, hey, join the team.
I was very rapt.
Congratulations, by the way, and well done. Well done on that.
Thank you.
So you're already presenting at the moment, but you'll go into a trainer role for early next year, you mentioned earlier.
Yes, so I think I'm going to be sort of shadowing or part-taking my first IMT for Body Attack in February, which I'm really looking forward to. Brilliant.
For Body Attack, you said?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. That's really cool to hear. I like hearing that a lot. The team has evolved and developed quite so much over the past 3 or 4 years. I think since COVID sort of landed, and the same thing happened here from what I understand of what happened in New Zealand, where everyone was made redundant from their roles here and then had to reapply and go through it all. I think the team has changed quite a fair bit. There was a bit of a shake-up with the team. Some have moved on, some have stayed, and I think it's nice to actually see fresh new faces coming through, and obviously the people that I'm getting to know and chat through this avenue as well, this portal has been nice. So, yeah. What does the future hold for you? So you've got that coming up next year with training and presenting. Is there anything else you're looking to do? Are you looking to take on any more additional programs? What do you do for your full-time proper job as well?
We've been through that. We're not going to call it a proper job. So I guess this year's been, I actually just put up an Instagram post about it before we started talking, but this year's been full on, like full noise. Basically, it's felt like 4.5 quarters for me, because I was presenting at quarterly 1 workshop, quarterly 2 workshop, quarter 3 we had Melbourne Live, which was incredible. Then I headed over to London, and there was a lot of preparation involved with that, and then coming back basically straight into quarter 4. So it's been a full noise year, and I guess coming off the back of some very disjointed years with COVID, it's kind of slapped me in the face a bit, and I'm a bit tired, but rearing to go for next year. And yeah, I guess the main thing that's in my head is just getting stuck into that trainer space, and I know there's a lot to learn. I've done some of the sort of pre-learning stuff, and I guess really wanting to do that justice, because as we spoke about earlier, for a lot of people, myself definitely, when you think back about your first IMT or your first 2 or 3 IMTs, they're life-changing moments. You cry, normally you sweat, you're exhausted, you're hungry, but it really changes your life. And if I think about the modules that I've been to and the trainers that have delivered them, if I could be anywhere near half the caliber that they are, I would be a very happy person. Awesome. Because I think the skills you learn at an IMT aren't just relevant to group fitness. They're life skills, right? They're the ability to get up and talk to people, and even the ability to just, have feedback on a track. It's not dissimilar to anything else you might do, whether I write a piece of legal advice, I get feedback on it, I incorporate the feedback, I send it off again, I get more feedback. That's life. You never do something perfect the first time, you just have to get the feedback. So I guess that's what I'm focusing on for 2023.
I really like hearing that. You're the first person that I've chatted to that's actually related what we do in the group exercise space back into our real life, day-to-day lives. I thank you, because that's given me a bit of a I suppose a jolt in my mind to go, Tone, everything you've ever done when you're in group exercise space, you can relate back to your day-to-day. That's cool.
And look, coming from my main gig in the corporate world, you do have people, managers, who deliver feedback, and if it's to junior lawyers or whatever industry you're in, they could do with some of the skill set from group fitness about how to deliver feedback and how to make it land, and not coming in with 20 things to improve on because only 1 or 2 of those things are going to land. And giving people opportunities, taking small steps. I think it's a really valuable toolkit.
I appreciate that. I've learned something from you tonight, and I really do appreciate that, because that's given my, as people know, I'm GM for Body Bike here in Australia, and there's only 4 of us in the company here, so it's quite small. But there are things that I should probably be looking at which cross over between the two, which I've never ever thought of before. I've got a complete skill set that I haven't used properly in 4 or 5 years now when I haven't taught. That I could.
I'm sure you have been using it just subconsciously.
Yeah, you're probably right with that as well. But I think it's more having that awareness, and I think as I said, you've just unlocked something in my head to make me think about. Yeah, I hope that the people listening can gel with that as well, and realise that our skill set when we're in front of people in a classroom environment, in that GROUPEX environment, are able to use those skills in everything else that they're doing, everyday life stuff as well. Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you very much.
My I call her my baby sister-in-law, but she's not technically my sister-in-law. She's my partner's younger sister. She's just started teaching group fitness, and she's teaching the trip, and she is just fantastic. And when I was in New Zealand, I was able to go and teach a class with her, which was really, really special.
Awesome.
But seeing her just go from 0 to 100 and just absolutely blossom because of, I guess, I'd like to think the good training and the good training practices that Les Mills has offered her. It's just so cool to watch it from the outside.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, another couple of questions to throw at you. The next one, what bit of advice can you give to an instructor that might be listening who wants to improve or look to get into a trainer presenter role? And I know it's sort of a 2-pronged question with that. So if we maybe start with looking to improve.
I guess I'd probably go back to that really pivotal piece of feedback I got when I was unsuccessful on the team, which is I think a lot of people think more is more. And with group fitness, my personal opinion is that actually often less is more, um, particularly with those high intensity classes. And I guess the rest of it, in terms of improving, asking for feedback,
Yep.
um, teaching with other instructors. Every time I do someone else's class, I learn something. And even if it's having a rookie or a new person teach with me, they might say an absolute cracker of a one-liner, and you're just there in hysterics, and it stays with you. So yeah, teaching with other instructors, getting in the mirror. And I think the other thing is anyone who's been in group fitness, unless you're a real superstar, you get a lot of no's, right? Like you have in your head that you want to do this opportunity, and you might get a no, and it's often not a reflection on you. It's often just a reflection on whatever the opportunity is, and it's not your time, and it's not the right fit. And I think if you can have a mindset that is really positive about that, and you're not disappointed, and you're going, oh well, beat this, beat that, like, and you remember why you're doing it, which is because you love teaching the people in front of you, then you're going to be in the best position and the best mindset. And when the opportunity comes, it'll come.
Yeah. I like that. You've answered both of those there, and I think that's awesome. It's a nice bit of honest feedback for those of you that are listening. Take it on board, because I think there's, out of all of the episodes that I've done, there's bits of gems that pop up at the end that are scattered throughout each episode as well when I'm chatting to people, but it's really that hone-in bit that lands right at the end, which I really do appreciate you guys sharing with me.
This is the GROUPEX podcast.
Last question I want to ask you, is there anything in the industry that you feel needs to change? And if so, what is it? And there doesn't need to be anything, but it's a question which I enjoy asking people, because this whole movement for me, and the whole podcast, and me getting people speaking about group exercise more often to get clubs to understand the pulling power that it's got, is part of that. You know, if there's stuff to change, what is it? Let's discuss it. What is there going on that could be done differently to give us a better result? And is there anything?
So I have got an answer to that, and I'm actually going to be a bit cheeky, and I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh,
so,
hello. Controversial.
I am a cheeky person, so I'm flipping the switch.
Yeah.
But I noticed the tagline for the show is Group X, not Group Fit.
Yep.
And heads up, in New Zealand, basically everyone calls it Group Fit or Group Fitness. Yep. So I'd never even really heard Group X until I came here. Yep. And I was like, what is Group X? But group exercise. What's your thinking behind the Group X?
I'm so glad that you asked. I haven't had anybody really ask me a question yet, so I really appreciate the fact that you've flipped it on me here. Okay, the words group, fitness. When I think group, yep, cool, I get that. When I think fitness, I don't think a group of people doing fitness. People aren't fitnessing. People are exercising. So to me, the words group fitness don't sit correctly. Group exercise does, because there's a group of people doing exercise, and fitness is the outcome of the exercise we do. Personal training, that lands. Yeah, personal training is personalized training. When I thought of group fitness, it was like, well, I know what it is because we've been conditioned to understand what group fitness is. But really, when you put those two words together, group fitness doesn't actually make sense. Group exercise does, because it's what is actually happening in that space. It's a group of people exercising, and fitness is the outcome of what they're doing. And that's where it sort of came from me. When I first started in 2003, it was in Sydney, in North Sydney, and it was very much group exercise. Everywhere you went, it was group exercise, or GX was on the timetable, and you saw it throughout Fitness First, group exercise room. Somewhere between then and I'm going to say maybe 2010, 2012, it changed into group fitness. And we just accepted it. It became a group fitness instructor, because you weren't a group exercise instructor before. You were just an instructor. Yeah. Then we became GFIs or GFMs or GFCs or whatever the terminology was back then. When I started really thinking about what was happening in the space, to me, that's where I think something has changed. Something went not wrong, because that's not the right terminology to use in this, but something went, oh, okay, yeah, that's group fit. That just happens over there. That's group fitness. And that's where I think the attention from gym owners and club managers sort of didn't give it the attention that it deserved anymore, because it was just fitness. It's over there. Yeah, whatever. It's just that goes on over there. I think if we start changing it back to group exercise and really referring to what it is that we're doing in that space, to me, that's the first step forward to make a change.
That's really interesting to hear. And it actually probably dovetails quite perfectly into what I was going to say was my bugbear, or what I'd change about the industry. And I think a lot of it does come down to labeling. It really frustrates me when I hear from, sometimes it's personal trainers or sometimes it's gym staff. There's this sort of, sometimes there's an impression that group exercise is the gateway, or it's the training pen, or it's the beginner's option. And yes, that is true. Like, it is a really powerful tool to getting people who are not confident in the gym into exercising 100%. But it's also not true that it's not a very powerful tool for those who are at the top level of their fitness. You know, you can be a really serious athlete and you can still incorporate some form of group exercise into your routine and your regimen. And yeah, I sometimes you overhear personal trainers who almost might steer their clients away from group exercise because they want them just to do what they've programmed and that's it. But look, if you're seeing your trainer, or your trainer's written you a program, and you know you're doing 3 weight sessions a week, maybe 1 with your trainer and 2 on your own, and they've written you a program, and the trainer recommends some sort of aerobic or cardiovascular activity in there, you're going to have a much better time doing the cardio class that you like with other people, and you've told your friend you're going to meet them, so you're not going to miss it.
100%.
Than you are doing boring 20 minutes on the treadmill. And I just think, and you know, the ability to push yourself to a high level in those classes is still there, and it's not in every class, and it's not for every person, and it should not be for every person.
Exactly.
But the more people that have access to it, the better, because we know it's such a powerful social connection, and we know that the research tells us that in terms of people coming back to the gym and their commitment to the gym, group exercise is often the tool. So that would be my bugbear. No,
look, I appreciate that. It's thank you for asking the question, but also thank you for what you've just said with relation to that as well, because I think that's a very important thing that we need to get talking about more often as well. I remember when I first started in 2003, there was the PT guys, and then there was the GROUPEX guys, and I was probably one of the only 2 or 3 that did both. Now, as a personal trainer, I got all my clients from my GROUPEX classes. Yeah. I did every single triple pack that the gym gave me as well, and converted all those guys, and not talking myself up, but I know how to sell. So yes, that was easy to get someone into, whether it was once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month, whatever it was, I was still able to get every single one of those guys to come aboard and train. But the most of my clients came from my classes because I was in front of them. I'd connected with them. They enjoyed what I was doing and were like, oh, do you do PT? Yes, I do. Cool, let's go. Let's do some PT sessions. And to me, it was the best way to do it. I think a lot of PTs, and not all PTs, but a lot of PTs are scared. They think that if they recommend group exercise class, then they're not going to get that person to come back to do training with them. You do training in order to get that edge. You get that little bit more. You have that personalized session with someone in order to be pushed past your limits and do it. Not just rock up and, hey, yeah, I see a PT 3 times a week, but I don't actually do anything else. Now, I had some clients that would only come and see me once a week and expect miracles. I mean, I was good, but I wasn't God. You know, I was good at what I was doing. But hey, if you're only coming to me once a week for an hour or 45 minutes to train, and you're sitting at home eating pizza and whatever else you're doing on Friday, Saturday nights, I can't help you. And
look, by the same token, there's probably people who've been doing 3 or 4 body pump classes a week for 10 years.
Yes.
Who, if they did a weight session on the floor, their mind might be blowing, and they might have some new results and some new revelations. But I think it goes both ways.
Exactly. No, Ella, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for chatting to me. Thank you for asking the question. too, because I
Thank you
really
for having me.
no, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing a bit of your night with us and getting to know you better than I did an hour and a half ago as well, and sharing your story with everyone. So I know that people will gel and listen to what you've got to say. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.